Ladies and gentlemen, we are at war with China. You really need to know this to understand this concept in order to better plan for things ahead which may be coming. I know that may sound crazy at first, but I have a pretty good track record of talking about things and it happening and it being correct. It's the old joke. I need new conspiracy theories because my old ones all came true. I've been talking about this thing. I talk about things and they come out to be true. In 2001, a couple months before September 11th, I told everybody we were about to get into a big war. Some of these things geopolitically are easy to see uh, if you look outside the framework of what the media is showing you and telling you. We are at war with China and have been for at least a few years. Think about this. It is coming out now that that we know for sure that the virus that shall not be named on YouTube was released out of China. Some are saying accidentally, some are saying on purpose, but that that virus, they didn't even have the expertise to make that. It was after they got U.S. help on that particular virus. Was it able to get gain of function? So then this thing was released from one of their bio weapons facilities there in Wuhan, and not only did it just happen to escape, it just happened to escape there in Wuhan while there was a international police competition going on. So there was police officers from all over the world there in Wuhan when this thing came out. And then after the competition, they all went back home to their respective countries. And whammo, if this thing was released on purpose, and I'm very sure that it was, then that was an act of war on the world. But other things are happening as well. 20 years ago, I was telling people that China was working with globalists to try to absorb the United States, and we see it happening now. And I've been sent this video. I haven't seen it yet, but I've been told what the video entails. And this is going to back up my claim that we are already at war with China. If they released this thing on purpose, even if they released it accidentally, that could potentially be an act of war, because if their guidelines and safeguards were so weak that this thing just seeped out, then that's a problem. But if they released it on purpose, then that's an act of war. It just happened to get released before the 2020 election. Now we see what Trump is doing with China and the trade war. There's other things that China has done, the fentanyl into the country, the buying up of farmland by bases, and this video is going to talk about that extensively. The spy balloon that went over the United States, the fact that Biden and Blinken were receiving money from China, that China's been paying U.S. politicians to look the other way while they've slowly been encircling the United States, all points to one thing: we are at war with China. Another thing, too, in 2018, Trump wrote an executive order saying that if any country interfered in the 2020 election, that was an act of war. So in that case, we've got evidence that Great Britain had interfered with the voting machines, but then also China did a bunch of things to interfere with that as well. And if that's the case, we are in a soft state of war. A lot of people think that World War III is going to happen and it's going to be overnight and it's going to be tanks and nukes and all that kind of stuff. But that's what China's been doing, is an asymmetrical warfare on the United States, where they have been bribing politicians, and then once these politicians in their pockets, it allows them to buy up real estate around bases, take the Panama Canal, basically encircle the United States, buy off politicians. They're getting special access programs from politicians so they can copy our technology. And in this video, even China themselves says that they're ready for war. So without further ado, let's check out Matt Morse's video here. He's awesome. Go check him out.
Ladies and gentlemen, the United States of America has just scored an absolutely massive legal win against China. You see, just the other day, the state of Missouri won a $24 billion judgment against China's Communist Party because they were found guilty of hoarding personal protective equipment during the COVID-19 pandemic. And folks, I'll tell you what, this is absolutely huge. Because not only did China unleash the COVID-19 virus, but as we now know, they also worked behind the scenes to hoard critical medical equipment, making the pandemic even worse for the rest of the world. So today, we're going to break all of this down, and also we're going to explain why this is a huge step forward in holding China accountable. So folks, here's what happened. This lawsuit was originally filed 5 years ago in 2020 by Missouri's then Attorney General Eric Schmidt. You see, Attorney General Schmidt accused China of obstructing the production, purchase, and export of critical medical supplies like personal protective equipment right when the world needed it most. Missouri claimed that China's actions caused significant harm, including lost tax revenue and increased state spending on emergency medical supplies. And guess what? The total economic damage was estimated to exceed $8.16 billion, which justified the court awarding Missouri a staggering $24 billion in damages. But folks, here's the crazy part. You want to know how China responded to all of this? They didn't. They completely ignored the lawsuit altogether. In fact, they didn't even send a representative to show up in court, which led Missouri to winning a default judgment against them. And so all of that being the case, Missouri's current Attorney General, a guy named Andrew Bailey, sent out a crystal clear message. This ruling does not absolve China of responsibility for what they did. Now, folks, let's take a step back and look at the bigger picture here. But before we do that, I want to say real quick that if you guys enjoy the daily news coverage, please consider subscribing to the channel because it really does help a lot with my daily struggle against the YouTube algorithm. But okay, here's the deal, folks. Not only did China unleash COVID-19 onto the world, no, they also hoarded personal protective equipment, making sure that the rest of the world, including the United States of America, was struggling to get the basic medical supplies that they needed. And by the way, this wasn't just some innocent accident. No, this was a deliberate act of economic warfare, and guess what? It cost American lives. But now, the great state of Missouri is fighting back. And by the way, if China refuses to pay the $24 billion ruling, Missouri is planning to start seizing Chinese-owned farmland inside of the state to collect on the judgment. In fact, take a look at what former Missouri State Attorney General Bailey had to say about that. In a message directly targeted at China, former Attorney General Bailey wrote, "Hey China, you owe Missouri $24 billion. I just won a judgment in court. Pay up or we start seizing assets and farmland." So folks, there you have it. Now Missouri is coming after China's farmland. And folks, let me tell you something a little bit weird. For some strange reason, China actually owns a lot of farmland inside of America. In fact, I want you guys to take a look at this map, which shows exactly where all of the Chinese-owned farmland is inside of the country. So folks, as I said a moment ago, China owns a lot of farmland inside of the United States of America. And hey, do you guys notice anything a little bit suspicious? A lot of this farmland is located right next to U.S. military bases. And folks, if that doesn't sound like a national security threat...
We see that Fort Leonard Wood, Whiteman Air Force Base, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, a lot of these bases have, is the only land that they have in that state. I would love to see every state in the union start doing this, where they sue them for the things they did during the coronavirus and start seizing these farmlands that are around these bases. California probably won't do it because they're too taken over by China. But and this is the reason why we've got sabotage, all kinds of sabotage going on. We've got Chinese agents coming over the border. China sent us a bunch of power grid transformers that all had back doors so they could cyber attack them. This is serious. The reason why I want to talk about this is because you need to be prepared. You need to have a stockpile of food and energy generation. We've got two major problems in the world right now: China and then in Europe. That might blow up into a deal where it's Europe versus Russia there, and the United States will be affected by that. So let's continue on and see what Matt Moore says here. He's awesome.
In fact, in just the last few years, we've actually caught Chinese nationals spying on military bases numerous times. As some of you might remember, it was just a couple months ago that 5 Chinese students at the University of Michigan were caught spying on a nearby U.S. military base, lying about it to the police, and also they tried to delete the evidence. And guess what? All 5 of them were apprehended, charged with espionage, and then deported back to China. So folks, when you put the pieces together, it becomes crystal clear just what's going on here. It seems pretty clear to me that China isn't just buying up American farmland for agricultural purposes. No, they're using it as a cover to conduct espionage operations against the United States. Which is exactly why the state of Missouri seizing Chinese-owned farmland is not just the right move, it's a necessary move. And you know what? If you ask me, we should be doing this across the entire country. Now, if you think that's a little bit drastic, a little bit radical, take a look at this. Less than a week ago, China literally came out and said that they're more than willing to go to war with the United States of America. That's right, they're just bluntly, publicly talking about their willingness to go to war with the US. So once again, let's ask ourselves this very basic question: why are we allowing the Chinese government to own farmland next to our military bases? And also, why are we allowing them to keep a foothold in our domestic American economy? So you know what? Once again, me personally, I applaud Missouri for what they're doing here. Because folks, let's be clear here for a second. This is what it means to take national security seriously. And so everyone, let's try to summarize what's going on here. What's the real takeaway? A United States federal judge just ruled in favor of the state of Missouri, granting them a $24 billion judgment against China's Communist Party for hoarding medical equipment during the COVID-19 pandemic. China has completely ignored the entire situation, and so now Missouri's Attorney General has vowed to start seizing Chinese-owned farmland as well as other assets inside of the state to collect on that $24 billion judgment. And as it turns out, China actually owns farmland all across America. Much of it is located suspiciously close to U.S. military bases. And on top of that, we've already caught Chinese nationals on numerous occasions spying on those very military bases. And to top all of that off, just a couple days ago, China came out and very plainly said that they're actively preparing for war with the United States of America. So folks, what does all of this tell us? It tells us that the great state of Missouri is absolutely doing the right thing by trying to hold China legally accountable, and now they're seizing China's assets, primarily farmland. And like I said earlier, hopefully this is just the beginning, because you know what? Between you and me, I don't even think that China should be allowed to own farmland in the US. So folks, here's my final thought on all of this. If Missouri can do this, that means there's absolutely nothing stopping other states from taking the exact same action. The way I see it, the sneaky and malicious way that China handled COVID didn't just negatively impact Missouri, no, it negatively impacted every single state in the nation. So you know what, folks? Personally, I hope that other states follow Missouri's lead with all of this. Because everyone, here's my crazy opinion on all of this. I personally think that American farmland should be owned by Americans, not the Chinese Communist Party. But now, folks, before we wrap up with today's video, I want to say real quick that I've actually gone ahead and made...
Very, very awesome. So I didn't know that Missouri did this. Missouri, that's awesome. All the other states need to do this. There's a couple of communist countries that would not do this. The communist country of Hawaii and the communist country of California probably wouldn't do this. But that's why we need to change, regime change in those communist countries. Kissinger started this whole thing back in the early 70s when he started opening up trading to them. This has been a multi-generational plan by the globalists to have China absorb the United States. Kissinger, there was in the early 70s, there was no reason to open up the trade that we did with China. China is an enemy, and we basically created this monster, the globalists did, by opening up trade to China. So Kissinger was a big part of that. But also, it was him that said that, if there, with the right emergency, Americans would be glad to see Chinese troops in the streets and all that kind of stuff. And they were working on this for a long time, the Safe City Act. So they were going to use the United Nations and to get in here, have some kind of issue, and then have the UN come in, and UN peacekeepers were going to take over the major cities. The Safe Cities Act, all these Democratic mayor of these major cities signed on to this, and which shows you what their plan was. The United States military and the police forces were not in any position not to patrol and take care of these cities, and violence wasn't so out of control that we needed the UN to come in here. So you see what they were up to. So we see a lot of sabotage happening. I've been covering it on this channel. There's lots of fires, a lot of weird things going on. The Chinese agents were coming over the border by the thousands. And then China releases this virus, whether accidentally or on purpose. It was on purpose, but after they released the virus, we see that they held supplies that would help us with that, and that's another reason why we need to get rid of China. When they manufacture everything, we are at their mercy when something like this happens. By the way, during the election, I put out a short video. It was Dr. Phil talking to Trump, and they were talking about the same thing. They were talking about all of these bases that were surrounded, that had all this farmland purchased next to it. And I put that video out, and YouTube took it down. So in order for this to occur, they'd also need the control of the media, and that's what's been going on. Control the media, buying off politicians, purchasing land in the states, releasing a certain virus during the election to cause problems for Trump getting reelected. So that's what's going on. There's all kinds of evidence, and it's really time for you to see stuff like this and to get prepared. I'm working on a book, a survivalist book, a doomsday prepper type of book, and I would recommend that you have at least 3 months worth of food and energy generation and other things like that. So please, if you've made it this far, I feel like I've earned your subscription. Please like, share, and subscribe. We'll see you on the next Ultra Top Secret.